Commander Vextal had seen enough recruits from various species to know trouble when it walked through his training facility doors. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the day two humans arrived at the Galactic Defense Academy. "Great," he muttered, his 4 eyes scanning the datapad with growing dread. "Just what I needed. Deathworlders." The first human was Maya Torres, a compact female with dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. Her medical file read like a horror story. Broken bones, 7 times. Concussions, 4. Near-death experiences. The list went on for 3 pages, and yet here she was, grinning like some sort of predator who'd just spotted easy prey. The second human made Vextal's scales crawl even more. Jake Morrison stood nearly 2 meters tall, his pale skin marked with countless small scars that spoke of a childhood spent doing things that would traumatize most civilized species. His psychological profile was even more disturbing than Maya's medical records. "Welcome to Sector 7 Training Facility," Vextal announced to the assembled recruits, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "I am Commander Vextal, and for the next 6 months I will be responsible for turning you soft-bodied weaklings into something resembling soldiers." A Zenthari recruit, all purple skin and nervous tentacles, raised one appendage. "Sir, what about the humans? Shouldn't they have special accommodations?" Maya snorted, a sound that made several recruits flinch. "Special accommodations? Kid, where I come from, we use radioactive materials as nightlights." Jake nodded sagely. "Back home our idea of a gentle morning jog involves dodging animals that could eat most of your species for breakfast." Vextal felt a headache building behind his primary eyes. Humans? Why did it have to be humans? The first week of training went about as well as anyone could have expected, which is to say it was an unmitigated disaster. The assault course designed to challenge the physical limits of 12 different species. Maya completed it in record time, then asked if there was a harder version because she was just getting warmed up. The zero-gravity combat simulation that had reduced seasoned Korthak warriors to whimpering masses. Jake treated it like some sort of elaborate game, laughing as he performed maneuvers that defied both physics and common sense. "This is insane," whispered Thyra, a Melody female, whose crystalline skin shimmered with anxiety colors. She'd become fast friends with both humans, much to everyone's surprise. "How did they make it look so easy?" "Practice," Maya replied cheerfully, hanging upside down from a training bar while eating something that smelled like it could dissolve metal. "Plus, when you grow up on a planet where the plants actively try to eat you, everything else seems pretty tame." The other recruits had initially kept their distance from the humans, treating them with the mix of fear and fascination usually reserved for dangerous wild animals. But Maya and Jake had a way of drawing people in, their easy humor and genuine friendships breaking down barriers faster than diplomatic treaties. By week 3, even the most xenophobic recruits were sharing meals with them, listening to increasingly unbelievable stories about Earth with rapt attention. "So there I was," Jake was saying during evening mess, gesturing with a utensil that looked far too small in his massive hands, hanging from a cliff face about 300 meters up. "When this mountain cat decides I look like dinner." "What did you do?" asked Zorth, a young Vakran whose scales had shifted to bright orange with excitement. "What any reasonable person would do," Jake replied with perfect seriousness. "I let go of the cliff." The table erupted in shocked chittering and clicking sounds from various species. "You fell 300 meters? Thyra's skin had gone completely white. "Nah, only about 30. There was a ledge, but the cat wasn't expecting that, so when I swung back up I caught it completely off guard." Maya rolled her eyes. "He's leaving out the part where he screamed like a little girl the entire time." "I did not scream. I was making strategic vocalizations designed to confuse the enemy." The friendship between Maya and Thyra had surprised everyone, not least because Melody were notoriously fragile. Their bodies were essentially living crystal, beautiful, but brittle. The idea of one befriending a human seemed like pairing fine china with a sledgehammer. But Thyra was different. She had a sharp wit that could match Maya's sarcasm, and a curiosity about human culture that bordered on obsession. "Tell me again about this extreme sports concept," she said during one of their late-night conversations in the dormitory. "Well," Maya began, settling into her bunk, "imagine taking something that could kill you, then doing it for fun." "Ulv, that describes everything humans do." "Exactly. You're getting it." Their instructor, Sergeant Krexnall, a battle-scarred Throgian with more cybernetic parts than original body, had initially been skeptical of the human-Melody friendship. Throgians were warriors by nature, respect earned through combat prowess and survival instincts. The idea of a delicate crystal being befriending a Deathworlder seemed like weakness. That opinion changed during week 5. The training exercise was supposed to be routine, a simple urban combat simulation in the facility's holographic training bay. Teams of 4 would navigate a mock city, complete objectives, and extract without taking excessive simulated damage. Maya's team consisted of herself, Thyra, Jake, and a nervous Zenthari named Blip, whose real name was unpronounceable by most species. Remember, Crexnell growled as the teams prepared to enter the simulation. This is not about glory. This is about working together. The scenario is designed to be impossible for any single individual to complete. The simulation began, dropping the teams into a war-torn cityscape complete with simulated enemy fire, crumbling buildings, and civilians to rescue. Most teams immediately took cover, carefully planning their approach with the methodical precision drilled into them over weeks of training. Maya's team took a different approach. "Jake, you see that building with all the bad guys shooting from the windows?" Maya asked casually, as simulated plasma bolts sizzled past their position. "The big one? Yeah, I see it." "Good. Thyra, how long do you need to calculate structural weak points?" The Melody's skin flickered through several colors as she processed information at superhuman speed. "Approximately 12 seconds for full analysis." "Blip, can you create a distraction?" The Zenthari's tentacles writhed nervously. "What kind of distraction?" The Zenthari's tentacles writhed nervously. The nervous tentacles bowed, the loud, exploding kind. What happened next would be talked about in academy circles for years to come. While other teams carefully advanced using proper tactical formations, Maya's team executed what could only be described as controlled insanity. Blip created a series of diversionary explosions that drew enemy attention. Thyra identified exactly which support beams needed to be compromised to bring down the enemy stronghold. Jake and Maya, working in perfect synchronization, used a combination of their natural human agility and complete disregard for personal safety to reach those structural points. The entire building came down in a spectacular cascade of simulated debris, eliminating 90% of the enemy forces in one coordinated strike. The simulation ended with Maya's team completing all objectives in a record-breaking 8 minutes and 37 seconds. The previous record had been 43 minutes. Crexnell stared at the results display, his mechanical eye whirring as it focused and refocused. This is impossible." "Not impossible," Maya said helpfully. "Just really stupid if you think about it too hard." "We prefer the term creatively destructive," Jake added. But it was Thyra's comment that really drove the point home. "I calculate a 73.6% chance of mission success using their methods. On Earth, those would be considered excellent odds." The Throgian sergeant looked at the delicate crystal being who had just casually admitted to participating in a plan that had a 1 in 4 chance of killing everyone involved, and for the first time in his military career, he felt something approaching respect for a Melody. "You're all completely insane," he said finally. "Thank you, sir," all 4 team members replied in unison. Word of the exercise spread quickly through the academy. Humans, it seemed, had a talent for turning careful military doctrine into barely controlled mayhem, and somehow making it work. More importantly, they had a gift for bringing out similar tendencies in their alien friends. Thyra, who had arrived at the academy as a nervous intellectual more suited for research than combat, was now volunteering for the most dangerous training exercises. Other recruits who had spent weeks playing it safe were suddenly taking calculated risks inspired by the human's example. Vexed Hull watched this transformation with growing unease. His perfectly ordered training facility was becoming something resembling fun. Recruits were actually enjoying themselves, forming genuine friendships across species lines, and worst of all, becoming better soldiers than any class he'd ever trained. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Crix, reported during one of their daily briefings, "the human influence is spreading. Yesterday, I observed a Korthak and a Vekran working together on a tactical problem using what they called human logic. And they solved it in half the expected time by ignoring 3 separate safety protocols." Buxell's headache intensified. "Casualties?" "None, sir. In fact, their method was so effective that other teams are requesting to learn it." This was exactly what the commander had been afraid of. Humans weren't just participating in galactic military culture, they were changing it. Their casual disregard for impossible odds was infectious. turning careful, methodical soldiers into something resembling pirates, he muttered. Sir? Nothing, Lieutenant. Continue monitoring the situation. The 8th week brought the midterm evaluations, a series of tests designed to measure individual progress and team cohesion. It was during these evaluations that the first real signs of trouble appeared. Maya had been selected for an individual leadership assessment, a solo mission simulation designed to test decision-making under pressure. The scenario was a hostage rescue situation, with multiple variables, and no clear correct solution. She was 3 hours into the 12-hour simulation when everything went wrong. The training bay's holographic systems, which had functioned flawlessly for decades, experienced what the technicians later described as a catastrophic matrix failure. One moment, Maya was carefully negotiating with simulated terrorists in a controlled environment. The next, she was trapped in a malfunctioning program where the safety protocols had completely shut down. The simulated weapons became real. The holographic explosions generated actual heat and concussion. What had been a training exercise became a genuine life-or-death situation. Emergency shutdown, Old Vextahol barked, but his technicians were already working frantically at their controls. Sir, the system isn't responding. Something's corrupted the core matrix. Through the observation windows, they could see Maya moving through what was now essentially a real combat zone. Her training suit's monitors showing rising stress levels as she realized the danger she was in. Can we get her out? Jake demanded, pushing past security to reach the control room. His usual easygoing demeanor had vanished, replaced by something cold and focused that made even the Throgian guards step aside. The simulation bay is sealed, Chris reported, his voice tight with strain. Manual override won't respond and the blast doors are locked down until the program completes or what? Holes. Or the participant is eliminated. The temperature in the control room seemed to drop several degrees. Jake's voice when he spoke was perfectly calm and somehow more terrifying because of it. You're telling me that Maya is trapped in there with real weapons, real explosives, and the only way out is to complete an impossible mission or die trying. The mission parameters indicate a 12% survival rate under optimal conditions, one of the technicians offered helpfully. Current conditions are not optimal. Thyra had arrived during this exchange, her crystalline skin cycling through colors that had no names in any known language. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made several species' inner ears ache. How long does she have? The program is scheduled to run for 9 more hours, Vextahol replied grimly. But given the current parameters, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Through the observation windows, they watched as Maya took cover behind what had been a holographic wall but was now genuine concrete and steel. Her movements were precise, controlled, but they could all see the fatigue beginning to set in. No one, not even a human, could maintain peak performance under those conditions for 9 hours. There has to be something we can do, Blip said, his tentacles writhing with agitation. The blast doors are designed to withstand a direct hit from a Korthak battle cruiser, Crixinol explained. Even if we had the equipment to cut through them, it would take days. Jake was staring at the sealed chamber with an expression that made seasoned warriors take a step back. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and precise. Has anyone considered that you might be approaching this problem wrong? What do you mean? Vextahol asked. You're thinking like reasonable people. Maya's trapped in there with an impossible situation that's designed to kill her. Jake's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. The thing is, impossible situations are kind of a human specialty. That doesn't change the parameters of, doesn't it? Jake interrupted. Thyra, you've been analyzing that system since we got here. What do you think? The Melody's skin had stabilized to a deep blue color that indicated intense concentration. The simulation system is designed to create realistic but manageable challenges. It's not equipped to handle someone who actually treats impossible odds as merely inconvenient. Meaning? Meaning Maya isn't trying to complete the mission, according to the parameters. She's treating it like a real situation where the only rule is survival. As if summoned by their conversation, Maya's voice crackled through the communication system. She sounded tired but unbroken, with that particular tone of voice that Jake had learned to associate with Maya about to do something spectacularly dangerous. Control, this is Torres. I don't suppose anyone wants to explain why the training dummies just tried to actually kill me? Torres, this is Commander Vextahol. There's been a system malfunction. The simulation has become real. Well, that's just fantastic. Her laugh held no humor whatsoever. Let me guess. The only way out is forward. Affirmative. 9 hours remaining on program cycle. There was a long pause, filled only with the sound of distant explosions from within the chamber. Copy that, Control. Torres out. The communication link went dead. For the next 6 hours, everyone in the observation deck watched as Maya Torres single-handedly rewrote the book on military tactics. The mission, designed to be completed by a full squad using careful coordination and overwhelming firepower, was being tackled by one human with a talent for turning disaster into opportunity. She used the malfunctioning holographic systems against themselves, creating false targets that confused the program's targeting algorithms. She turned structural damage from explosions into tactical advantages, using collapsed walls for cover and destroyed equipment for improvised weapons. Most impressively, she began talking to herself in a running commentary that provided both stress relief and tactical analysis. Okay, Maya, let's review. 12 hostiles in the North Corridor, probably more behind the barricade. No backup, limited ammunition. And oh yeah, everything is trying to actually murder you. A pause punctuated by gunfire. On the plus side, Ma'am always said I needed more excitement in my life. Jake found himself grinning, despite the circumstances. Even trapped in a death trap, Maya couldn't resist making jokes. She's incredible, Thyra whispered, her skin flickering with admiration colors. She's human, Jake replied, as if that explained everything. And to him it did. But as hour 7 arrived, it became clear that even Maya's exceptional capabilities had limits. Her movements were slower now, her witty commentary replaced by labored breathing. The program had adapted to her tactics, becoming more aggressive and unpredictable. She's not going to make it, Chris said quietly. Jake's expression went completely still. Yes, she is. The program has evolved beyond original parameters. Even if she completes the primary objectives, the extraction phase requires. She's not going to complete the primary objectives, Jake interrupted. Then how? She's going to do what humans do best. Jake's smile was genuinely terrifying now. She's going to break the rules. And that's exactly what happened. Instead of trying to rescue the holographic hostages according to the mission parameters, Maya did something the program had never been designed to handle. She convinced the holographic terrorists that they were all trapped in the same malfunctioning system and turned them into allies. The sight of a human and a collection of artificial intelligences working together to escape a training simulation gone wrong was surreal enough to make several observers question their understanding of reality. This is either brilliant or completely insane, Vexkull muttered. With humans, those aren't mutually exclusive categories, Krexnell replied. Maya's improvised alliance succeeded where military doctrine would have failed. Working together, they managed to reach the simulation's extraction point with 37 minutes to spare. The blast doors cycled open, revealing Maya Torres, exhausted, covered in simulated blood and very real dust, but very much alive. She looked up at the crowd of anxious faces staring down at her and managed a tired smile. So she said, her voice hoarse but steady, "Does this count as passing the evaluation?" The medical bay erupted into controlled chaos as Maya was checked for injuries, debriefed by security, and generally fussed over by everyone who had spent the last 9 hours convinced they were watching her die. Jake hadn't left her side since the blast doors opened, and his relief was palpable to everyone present. "Next time you decide to rewrite military history," he told her, "give a guy some warning." "Next time, Jake? I'm pretty sure they're going to wrap me in safety padding and make me take remedial classes on following directions." She was wrong about that, as it turned out. Word of Maya's impromptu alliance with malfunctioning AIs spread through the academy like wildfire, then beyond into the wider galactic military community. Within days, tactical instructors from across the galaxy were requesting copies of the simulation data, trying to understand how a single cadet had solved an impossible scenario by treating artificial enemies as potential allies. The implications were staggering. If humans could convince hostile AIs to cooperate, what did that mean for conflicts with synthetic species? If they could find common ground with programs designed to kill them, how might they approach diplomatic situations that other species considered hopeless? But Maya herself seemed oblivious to the excitement her actions had generated. She was more concerned with catching up on the training she'd missed while recovering from her extended simulation experience. "It's not that complicated," she explained to a gathering of instructors who had come to interview her about the incident. "They were stuck in the same broken system I was. We all wanted out. Basic problem solving." "But how did you know they would listen to you?" asked Professor Gethantar, A distinguished academic from the Alterian Institute of Military Studies. Maya shrugged. I didn't. But what was the worst thing that could happen? They kill me? They were already trying to do that. The professor's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation in his species. You wagered your life on the possibility that artificial constructs might be reasonable? I wagered my life on the possibility that anything intelligent enough to set traps and coordinate attacks might be intelligent enough to recognize a bad situation when it saw one. Maya's tone suggested she couldn't understand why this was so difficult to grasp. Besides, unreasonable people are usually more predictable than reasonable ones. If they'd stayed hostile, I could have worked with that too. The interview continued for hours, but Maya's answers remained consistent. To her, the impossible had simply been another problem requiring a creative solution. The fact that her solution had potentially revolutionary implications for galactic diplomacy was just a bonus. As week 10 arrived, the Academy had settled into a new rhythm. Maya had fully recovered from her extended simulation experience and was back to making training exercises look like recreational activities. Jake continued to treat physics as a series of amusing suggestions. Thyra had discovered an alarming talent for explosive demolitions that she attributed to learning human-style problem-solving techniques. Their friendship had become the stuff of Academy legend. A Deathworlder, a gentle giant and a crystal scholar, who had learned to think like a human. Other recruits looked up to them not just for their individual abilities but for the way they supported each other, which made what happened in week 11 all the more devastating. The advanced combat exercise was supposed to be the culmination of their training, a massive multi-day simulation involving all Academy cadets working in large-scale military operations. Teams would be scattered across a simulated battlefield the size of a small moon, complete with realistic weather, terrain challenges, and complex objectives. Maya, Jake, and Thyra had been assigned to different units, as was standard practice to prevent over-reliance on established friendships. Maya was with Strike Team Alpha, tasked with deep reconnaissance. Jake was assigned to Heavy Assault Group Beta, responsible for frontline combat operations. Thyra was placed with Tactical Support Unit Gamma, providing intelligence analysis and strategic coordination. The exercise began at dawn, on Monday. By Friday morning it was over, and nothing would ever be the same again. The distress signal came through at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Commander Vexahol was awakened by the shrill emergency alarm that meant only one thing: a cadet was in genuine danger. Report, he barked, his 4 eyes focusing on the holographic display showing the vast training battlefield. Strike Team Alpha has encountered an equipment malfunction, Lieutenant Crix announced, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Cadet Torres's environmental suit has suffered a catastrophic breach. The words hit the control room, like a physical blow. Environmental suits were supposed to be foolproof. Triple redundant systems designed to keep cadets safe in the harshest simulated conditions. A catastrophic breach meant life support failure. Vex still breathed. How long does she have? In the current atmospheric conditions? The technician's voice cracked slightly. Maybe 20 minutes, possibly less. Extraction team, immediate deployment. Sir, the nearest extraction point is 47 minutes away. Even at maximum speed, the terrain between here and her position is... Crix paused, checking his readings. It's impassable for standard rescue vehicles. Through the command center speakers came Maya's voice, transmitted through her suit's emergency beacon. She sounded calm, almost conversational, which somehow made everything worse. Control, this is Torres. I'm guessing you guys are seeing the same readings I am, so let's skip the part where you tell me everything's going to be fine. Torres, maintain position. Extraction team is en route. Copy that, Control. But we both know the math. A pause filled with static and the sound of labored breathing. Do me a favor and tell Jake and Thyra that this wasn't their fault, okay? Knowing those two, they're probably already blaming themselves. In Heavy Assault Group Beta's sector, Jake Morrison went completely still when Maya's transmission reached his unit. His team leader, a grizzled Korthak veteran named Grexnar, watched as the human's expression shifted from concern to something cold and terrible. Morrison, you will maintain position and await orders. Grexnar commanded, recognizing the look of someone about to do something spectacularly stupid. With respect, sir, Jake replied in a voice that suggested very little actual respect. My friend is dying, and charging across hostile terrain will only result in 2 casualties instead of 1. You cannot reach her in time. Jake's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Sir, you're thinking like someone who's never lived on a Deathworld. Before Grexnar could respond, Jake was gone, moving with a speed that defied his massive frame. Behind him, he left a squad of alien soldiers staring in shock at the human-sized hole he'd punched through their defensive perimeter. All units be advised, Grexnar announced grimly.
Human Morrison has gone rogue.
Do not attempt to intercept. I repeat, do not engage the angry human. In Tactical Support Unit Gamma, Thyra received the news about Maya's situation through official channels, processed it with her species' typical analytical precision, and immediately began calculating survival probabilities. The results were not encouraging. Thyra, her unit commander, a methodical Zenthari named Commander Flux, said gently, I know Torres is your friend, but you must understand that the mathematics are clear. There is nothing anyone can do. Thyra's crystalline skin cycled through colors that had no names in any known language, finally settling on a deep, angry red that made several of her teammates step back nervously. Commander, she said, in a voice like breaking glass, with respect, your mathematics don't account for human variables. What do you mean? I mean, Jake Morrison is currently traveling at speeds that should be physically impossible for his species across terrain that should be impassable, toward a situation that should be hopeless. While Thyra's skin flashed brighter red, and knowing Maya, she's not going to just sit there and wait to die. As if summoned by her words, Maya's voice crackled through the communication system again. Control, Torres here. Quick question. What's the official Academy position on improvised life support systems? Torres, do not attempt any modifications to your equipment. Maintain position and preserve oxygen. Yeah. See, here's the thing about that. Maya's laugh was breathless but determined. I've got about 15 minutes of air left, and I'm looking at a crashed supply drone that's got some interesting components. Worst case scenario, I blow myself up, which isn't really worse than suffocating. Torres, negative. Do not attempt. Sorry, Control, you're breaking up. Must be all this jury-rigged equipment I'm definitely not building. The transmission cut to static. In the command center, Vextol stared at the display showing Maya's location. Her suit's biometric readings were all over the place, indicating either extreme stress or, Sir, one of the technicians called out, I'm reading some kind of energy buildup at Torres' position. Whatever she's doing, it's drawing massive power. Is she trying to boost her communication signal? No, sir. This looks like, I don't know what this looks like. The energy pattern doesn't match anything in our database. 40 kilometers away, Jake Morrison was redefining the concepts of speed and endurance. His training had prepared him for combat, survival, and tactical thinking. It had not prepared him for the reality of watching his best friend die while he was too far away to help. So he decided to change the parameters. The terrain between his position and Maya's location included a deep canyon system that should have required hours to navigate safely. Jake's solution was elegantly simple. He didn't navigate it, he jumped it. The leap should have killed him. The landing definitely should have killed him. The fact that he rolled with the impact, absorbed the shock through techniques learned in a childhood spent falling off cliffs, and kept running without missing a step, was the kind of thing that would rewrite several textbooks on human physiology. Morrison to Control, he transmitted while sprinting across what the maps optimistically called moderately challenging terrain. What's Maya's current status? Morrison. Return to your unit immediately. That is a direct order. I'll take that as she's still alive, but not for long. ETA 12 minutes. Morrison, the terrain between your position and Torres is impassable. Our analysis indicates, your analysis didn't account for the fact that I'm really motivated right now. 8 minutes later, Jake crested a ridge that gave him his first visual of Maya's position. What he saw made him laugh out loud, not from humor but from pure, overwhelming relief. Maya Torres had taken the crashed supply drone, her malfunctioning environmental suit, and what appeared to be several pieces of the rocky terrain itself, and somehow built what could only be described as the galaxy's most dangerous life support system. Electricity arced between improvised components in patterns that hurt to look at. The entire contraption was held together with determination, spite, and what looked like strips torn from her uniform. And it was working. Maya, he called out as he reached her position. She looked up from her frankly terrifying creation, her face flushed but breathing normally. Jake, what are you doing here? Rescuing you, obviously. From what? I fixed the problem. Jake stared at the improvised device that was keeping his best friend alive through what appeared to be a combination of engineering principles and sheer stubborn refusal to die. Maya, that thing looks like it could explode at any second. Only if I built it wrong, which I didn't. She paused thoughtfully. Probably. Before Jake could respond, the sound of approaching aircraft filled the air. The official rescue team had finally arrived, their advanced equipment and trained personnel ready to handle the emergency with professional competence. They took one look at Maya's improvised life support system and immediately called for a hazmat team. Cadet Torres, the lead rescue technician, announced through his suit's speakers, "Please step away from the device and prepare for immediate evacuation." Actually, I'm pretty comfortable here. This thing's got better life support than my original suit. Ma'am, that device is an unshielded fusion reactor cobbled together from spare parts and held together with uniform fabric. It's drawing power from 3 different incompatible systems and outputting radiation levels that should have killed you an hour ago. Maya looked down at her creation with something approaching pride.
Yeah, but it works.
The evacuation process took 6 hours and required a team of specialists who kept muttering things like impossible, and how is she not dead, and we need to study this. Maya spent most of the time explaining her improvised engineering to increasingly horrified experts while Jake provided running commentary that made everything worse. See, the brilliant part was using the crystalline components from the drone's navigation system to create a quantum resonance chamber, Maya was saying to a group of scientists who looked like they were questioning their life choices. Most people would think that's dangerous, but if you calibrate it right, it actually stabilizes the fusion reaction. Most people would think that because it is dangerous, one of the scientists replied weakly. Sure, if you do it wrong, but I didn't do it wrong. How do you know you didn't do it wrong? Because we're having this conversation instead of being a small crater in the landscape. By the time Maya and Jake returned to the academy, word of the incident had spread throughout the facility. Maya Torres, the human who had convinced hostile AIs to become allies, had now built a functional life support system out of wreckage and attitude, while slowly suffocating to death. The official incident report took up 17 pages and required input from 12 different departments. The unofficial version, which spread through the cadet quarters like wildfire, was much simpler. Maya had looked death in the face and told it to come back later because she was busy. But for Jake and Thyra, the incident revealed something far more troubling. Maya's environmental suit hadn't just malfunctioned, it had been sabotaged. "Look at these readings," Thyra said, her crystalline skin flickering with analysis patterns as she reviewed the technical data. "The failure pattern is too precise, too targeted. Someone wanted her life support to fail." Jake's expression went very still. "Someone tried to murder Maya and make it look like an accident," Thyra confirmed. "The question is who and why." The answer came 3 days later, delivered by an encrypted message that bypassed all Academy security systems and appeared directly on Jake's personal terminal. "Human Morrison, your friend's survival was unexpected. This complicates our arrangements but does not change the fundamental situation. Torres has drawn too much attention, asked too many questions, and proven too resourceful for our comfort. The next accident will be more thorough. Consider this your only warning. Convince her to withdraw from the Academy, or watch her die." The message was unsigned, untraceable, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "They're threatening Maya because she's too good at what she does," Jake said grimly as he, Thyra, and Maya huddled in a secure conference room. "Someone doesn't want humans to succeed at the Academy. Or they don't want the galaxy to see what humans are capable of," Thyra added. "Maya's actions have challenged fundamental assumptions about military tactics, diplomatic possibilities, and survival capabilities. Some people might find that inconvenient." Maya listened to their analysis with growing anger. "So let me get this straight. Someone tried to kill me because I'm making other species look bad." "It's more complex than that," Thyra began. "No, it's not." Maya's voice carried an edge of fury that made both her friends step back slightly. "Someone tried to murder me because they're scared of what I represent. And when that didn't work, they threatened my friends." "Maya," Jake started. "They made this personal the moment they tried to suffocate me, in a broken suit. But threatening you too?" Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "That was a mistake." What happened next would become known throughout the galaxy as the Torres incident, though historians would debate for decades whether it should be classified as a military action, an act of vengeance, or simply what happened when someone was foolish enough to threaten a human's friends. Maya's investigation into her own attempted murder was methodical, thorough, and utterly ruthless, using techniques that combined human intuition with alien analytical methods learned from Thyra. She traced the sabotage back to its source within 72 hours. The trail led to a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of galactic government. A group of species supremacists, terrified by humanity's rapid integration into galactic society, had decided that humans needed to be discouraged. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Eliminate promising human cadets in ways that looked like accidents, creating a reputation for humans as tragically unlucky, rather than exceptionally capable. Maya had been their third target. The first 2 humans had died in training accidents that were now revealed as murders. 17 people, Maya announced to Jake and Thyra, as she finished compiling her evidence. 17 individuals across 6 species, including 2 academy instructors and a sitting member of the Galactic Defense Council. What are we going to do? Thyra asked. Maya's answer was immediate and absolutely terrifying. We're going to end them. Maya, we can't just... They murdered 2 humans and tried to murder me. They threatened to kill both of you if I didn't quietly disappear. Maya's voice was calm, conversational, and somehow more frightening than any scream. Jake, remember what you told me about humans in impossible situations? That they're kind of our specialty? Exactly. And this conspiracy thinks they can intimidate a human by threatening her friends. Maya's smile could have powered a small star. Halse, they're about to learn why that's such a bad idea. The plan Maya developed was audacious, illegal, and absolutely guaranteed to work. It involved simultaneously exposing the conspiracy to the galactic media, providing evidence to law enforcement agencies across 12 systems, and ensuring that every single conspirator faced consequences that were both legal and creatively appropriate. But first it required sending a message. The message arrived at the personal terminals of all 17 conspirators at exactly the same moment, bypassing every security system they had invested in as if it were a minor inconvenience. Greetings. My name is Maya Torres. You tried to kill me. You threatened my friends. This displeases me. You have 48 hours to confess your crimes and surrender to appropriate authorities. After that time expires, I will consider you to be actively hostile combatants and I will respond accordingly. You have been warned. The message included detailed evidence of each conspirator's involvement, copies of their private communications, and financial records showing exactly how they had funded the murder campaign. But the truly terrifying part was the postscript. Saints, my friends Jake Morrison and Thyra have asked me to handle this situation with appropriate restraint and respect for due process. I have agreed to their request. You should probably thank them for that. 18 hours later, the first conspirator surrendered to authorities, turning over complete records of the plot in exchange for protective custody. Within 36 hours, 14 of the remaining 16 had followed suit, apparently deciding that facing galactic justice was preferable to whatever Maya Torres might have in mind. The final 2 conspirators chose a different path. They hired assassins, military-grade equipment, and a team of mercenaries to eliminate the problem at its source. This turned out to be a mistake of galactic proportions. The attack came at dawn, just as Maya, Jake, and Thyra were leaving their dormitory for morning training. Professional killers with advanced weapons and tactical training, supported by military-grade equipment, and complete intelligence on their target's capabilities and weaknesses. They never had a chance. Jake Morrison, the gentle giant who treated physics as amusing suggestions, proved that his casual destruction of training equipment had not been his upper limit. The first attacker to target Thyra discovered what happened when you threaten someone under the protection of a human who had spent his childhood wrestling creatures that could eat most galactic species for breakfast. The second team found out what Maya Torres could do when she wasn't limited by Academy safety protocols, and someone had just tried to murder her friends. The third team decided that discretion was the better part of valor and surrendered immediately upon seeing what remained of the first 2 teams. The entire battle lasted approximately 4 minutes. The cleanup took 6 hours and required testimony from 17 different witnesses to convince investigators that 3 Academy cadets had single-handedly defeated a professional assassination team without suffering a single casualty. How? Was the only question Commander Vexel could manage when he arrived at the scene. They threatened our friends, Maya replied, as if that explained everything. To her it did. The aftermath of what the galactic media dubbed the Torres incident sent shockwaves throughout civilized space. The revelation that a xenophobic conspiracy had murdered human cadets, led to investigations that brought down governments and reshaped diplomatic relationships between dozens of species. But more importantly, it established a new understanding of humanity's place in galactic society. Humans, it became clear, were not just capable soldiers or innovative thinkers, they were something far more dangerous and far more valuable. They were loyal. Threaten a human, and you faced one angry individual. Threaten a human's friends, and you faced something that would reshape the galaxy to ensure your defeat. The funny thing, Maya said during her testimony before the Galactic Defense Council, is that all they had to do was leave us alone. We were perfectly happy being cadets, learning from other species, and contributing to galactic society. But they decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to succeed. And how do you respond to that assessment? Asked Counselor Vethran, a dignified Altarian whose species had been among those calling for restrictions on human military participation. Maya's smile was warm, friendly, and absolutely terrifying. They were right to be scared. They just weren't scared enough. The Torres incident became required study material at military academies throughout the galaxy, not as an example of what to do, but as a demonstration of what happened when you underestimated humans and, more importantly, what happened when you threatened their friends. Maya Torres graduated from the Galactic Defense Academy with the highest honors in the institution's history. Jake Morrison became the first human to receive commendations from 5 different species for creative battlefield tactics. Thyra earned recognition as the first Melody to successfully combine crystalline analytical capabilities with human-style problem-solving techniques. Together, they revolutionized galactic military doctrine, diplomatic protocols, and the fundamental understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of other intelligent species. But more importantly, they remained friends. So, Jake asked during their graduation ceremony, "What's next for the most dangerous human in the galaxy?" Maya grinned, looking out at the stars visible through the Academy's great windows. "I was thinking we could find some really impossible situations and see what happens when 3 friends decide to fix them." The Reaver's crystalline skin flickered with what the other species had learned to recognize as her version of a smile. "The mathematical probabilities suggest that we'll either save the galaxy or accidentally conquer it. Both outcomes sound interesting," Maya replied. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient civilizations that had spent millennia believing they understood the limits of possibility felt a collective shiver of anticipation and terror. The humans had learned to make friends across species lines. The galaxy would never be the same.